when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Or more accurately, Brian Fisher's spiritual brother from another mother. Excuse me, I'm E.W. Jackson, folks. Substituting for Brian Fisher. I was on with you a couple of days last week. Had to go away for about 3 days, but I'm back. And I'm going to be here with you all week long, sitting in for the inimitable Brian Fisher, who, by the way, is relocating. I finally got that word. He is relocating from one end of the country to another. And I would love to tell you all exactly where he's going. But let's just call it the vast Northwest, okay? From the South to the vast Northwest. Because I'm sure that Brian, like me, is not interested in broadcasting exactly where he is. Because while we'd love to see the many friends we have out there, occasionally people show up who aren't so friendly. But you all be praying for him because he's in the process of getting that done. And of course, my wife and I moved a year and a half ago. Of course, all of us know what it's like to move. My wife and I moved a year and a half ago, and it is no fun, folks. So he needs the time to get that done. So Brian, we're praying for you and looking forward to your being back. And by the way, you all know that this program, it airs all over the country on 200 FM stations, and you can find our station map at afr.net/station-finder/ afr.net/station-finder/ and because we probably have a station somewhere near you, but in case we don't, in that rare instance in which we don't, you can go to afr.net, just click on live streaming, and you can hear the program there. And by the way, we also podcast these programs at afr.net/talk/focal-point/ forgive all the technical stuff, folks. But if you go to the website, you'll get directions for all of that. And by the way, you can watch or listen live on Facebook Live at facebook.com/focal-point-Brian-Fisher, and so on and so forth. Check that out too. And by the way, obviously you won't hear Brian Fisher's voice today, and you'll hear mine, but nevertheless, we are on Facebook Live, and we're on YouTube as well. Same deal, youtube.com/channel. You know what? I would just Google Brian Fisher YouTube, and that'll probably bring you right to it. Look, this is Call-In Talk Radio, and I'm your host. I'm not the person who's supposed to do all the talking, so you can call me at 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840. I would love to hear from you. Now, I said I was away last week, and I have to give you all an update and a report. For the last 3 days of last week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I had to fly out on Wednesday, I was in Woodland Park, Colorado, which is about 30 miles, northwest, I think, of Colorado Springs. I was at Andrew Womack Ministries. Andrew Womack and I have become friends over the last year or so, and we decided we wanted to do a conference together. So he's got an organization called Truth and Liberty, and of course my organization is called STAND. So we did a conference called Stand for Truth and Liberty, and it was just absolutely great. And I'm not just saying that because I was a part of it. I mean, it really was. We had David Barton, we had William Federer, we had some preachers from around the country who did a tremendous job. But we had Alan West, the retired lieutenant colonel, an American hero, former congressman. He spoke, and we had some of the premier preachers from around the country, real heralds of the Word of God. We had Pastor Iverson Jackson, who is a very prominent leader in Arkansas. He's from Little Rock. We had Pastor Cecil Bly, likewise, in Louisiana. By the way, some of these preachers are officers in my organization, STAND. They are national vice presidents and state presidents. Pastor Cecil Bly is a national vice president of STAND. Pastor Iverson Jackson. Pastor Iverson Jackson is a retired lieutenant colonel, U.S. Army. We had Dr. Melvin Johnson, author of several books and host of a TV program in the Midland, Texas area. So we really had some tremendous folks sharing with us, and I mean, it was just outstanding. Oh, I can't forget my good friend, Pastor Dean Hunter. Pastor Dean Hunter is the pastor of Central Baptist Church in Kannapolis, North Carolina. A young pastor, spent many years there as a youth pastor, now there as senior pastor. And these are all men who are courageous for God, for his word, for truth, and for this nation. And I'm really just thankful to God to have been associated with them. And of course, Andrew Womack hosted this event, and he is a really courageous man of God. As you know, folks, many people with a ministry, the breadth that his has, I mean, he's got a worldwide ministry. He's got close to 500 acres out there in Woodland Park. He's got hundreds of employees out there working for the ministry. And, you know, the man spends millions of dollars a year ministering. He's got Caris College out there. It's a college full of students. And he has a heart for this country and the courage to speak up in our behalf, and really caught the vision of us coming together across racial and cultural lines, not allowing the left's garbage, their nonsense, to divide us. You know, one of the things that Andrew Womack said to me, because Pastor Iverson Jackson happens to be black, Pastor Cecil Bly happens to be black, Dr. Melvin Johnson happens to be black, and I happen to be black. And one of the things that he said to me is, he said, you know, many Americans don't know the depth of powerful, eloquent, articulate black leaders that there are, because the only people the media talks about are Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. And you would think that those are really the only preachers who've got anything to say. And every person I've just named to you is a person of substance and depth. And every time they spoke, people would come up to me and say, man, I didn't know about this guy. And the things that he talked about, the things he revealed, just amazing. How do I stay in touch with him? How do I follow his ministry? Well, folks, STAND has a network of people like that all over this country. Now, STAND is not a black organization, but we're committed to bringing people together across racial and cultural lines, which means we make a concerted effort to reach out and recruit black ministers into the conservative movement and bring them together with other ministers. Pastor Dean Hunter happens to be an American who is not black. He's, I hate the term white, but at any rate, but he's part of that. And there are many ministers from all kinds of backgrounds, Hispanic and black and white and Asian, who are part of STAND. And we just believe that that unity is a key to saving this country, because see, what the left wants to do is slice us and dice us into little balkanized groups and keep us at each other, so that they can pick off one here, pick off one there, pick off a group here, pick off a group there. But when we begin to come together and people see that kind of unity, wow, you know, that's something that the left absolutely, it scares them out of their wits, folks, because it violates their narrative, which is, and we're going to talk a little bit about that narrative today, which is, you know, America's a nation of white supremacy and all white people are racist and all black people are victims and you know, the country is, you know, rife with social injustice and white privilege. And I mean, this is the garbage that they spew daily, and the mainstream media amplifies it and sends it out there because they actually, and frankly, folks, they're not journalists. You know, CNN, the Communist News Network, CNN, they're not journalists. MSNBC, the Marxist Socialist No Brains channel, they're not journalists. These people are propagandists. They're propagandists for a very evil ideology, Marxism, socialism, and communism, and they are interested in destroying our constitutional republic and remaking it into some sort of totalitarian nation. And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. So before we get into this, I want you to hear, because there's been a lot of controversy around Illhan Omar and the president saying, she needs to go back where she came from. Well, he applied that to all of the four horsewomen of the Democrat apocalypse. But she's really the one who was rescued by our country, escaped Somalia, and came here under an asylum visa and is now an American citizen and serving in Congress. And she ought to be grateful. Instead, she's resentful and hateful, and she's got nothing good to say about our country. And so the president, and by the way, he was speaking at a rally, they started saying, send her back. And the president said, well, I don't really like that sentiment. And I understand what he's saying. We're not talking about sending her somewhere. We're talking about her just going voluntarily, which is, why wouldn't she? I mean, she doesn't have anything good to say about America, so why wouldn't she go somewhere else? And I can't think of a better place to start than Somalia, because that's where she left. And she said she did not get in touch with her. She did not discover or have to suffer with her otherness until she came to America. Her otherness, meaning being black and Islamic. Like, she's been horribly mistreated since she's been here. Well, somehow she ended up in Congress, and somehow she's got $1 million in the bank for her campaigns, and somehow the mainstream media is treating her like the newfound queen, shall we say, of the Congress, or one of them anyway, or princess of the Congress. I just get exasperated with hearing these privileged people who have been so mightily blessed to live in the United States of America downing and slandering and vilifying and excoriating our country like it's the worst place in the world. And the president was right to invite her to leave. I think the president would have probably had no problem if they had simply chanted, why doesn't she leave? Why doesn't she leave? Because I can't figure out why she doesn't leave if it's just that bad. But look, I want to talk to you about a subject that's going to be a theme probably for most of this week. And I want you all to get into this and be thinking about this. But first, listen to this clip of Illhan Omar reflecting on her feelings about America and about Al-Qaeda and about Hezbollah.
I remember when I was in college, I took a terrorism class, and
is that a such thing?
Yeah, there was.
So there is a lab for that?
There was a class that you.
Do you go to a lab then?
No,
you go out a field trip.
You learned the ideology of.
I'm glad you do that.
And so it was the thing that was interesting in the class was every time the professor said Al-Qaeda, he sort of like his shoulders went up, and
Yeah, he's in command here.
Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah.
He's an expert.
And it was, as
what's his name? What put his name on the area? Where does he live?
Saying his name.
Yeah.
You probably get to see him on CNN.
Yeah, of course. I love those guys.
But it is that you don't say America with an intensity. You don't say England with an intensity. You don't say the army with an intensity.
Qaeda.
But you say these names because you want that word to carry weight.
So let's back up here, shall we? First of all, she took a terrorism class to learn their ideology. And apparently she's learned it well. Because when speaking about the 9/11 attack that murdered 3,000 Americans, she said, somebody did something. That's how she described it. Somebody did something. And we use that as an excuse to be Islamophobic. She basically trampled on the graves of 3,000 innocent Americans like they did not matter at all. So apparently this terrorism class that she took had its desired effect. She has more affinity for the terrorism and the terrorists than she does for the United States of America. We'll be back in a moment.
And seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. From a distance, the fig leaves gave Jesus the impression that there was fruit on the tree. Upon closer inspection, the tree was fruitless. Perfect church attendance and ministry activity cannot replace actual Christ-like fruit produced in our lives. From a distance, it can appear as though we're bearing fruit, but what would we find with a closer look? Are we content with fruitful appearance, or do we yearn for the real thing?
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Dr. Richard Land, President of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Last Friday, I visited with you about the 50th anniversary of the first landing on the moon. Doubtless, you have seen much commentary on the event over the last weekend. It was an amazing feat. In less than a decade, America had answered President Kennedy's challenge to land a man on the moon and bring him safely home again before the end of the decade, and we made it with about 6 months to spare. Where was I when it happened? I was spending the summer with my parents in Houston, having just graduated from college and preparing to enter seminary at the end of August, having no idea that I would meet my wife of 48 years less than 3 months later in the seminary cafeteria. I had just finished preaching a youth revival, and I was sitting in my parents' den watching the moonwalk. After it was over, I must confess, I walked out into the backyard, looked up at the moon, and thought, we beat those lousy Russians to the moon. On a more serious note, the extraordinary technological feat of putting a man on the moon and bringing him safely home again underscores an important point. That was 50 years ago, a half century. And yet, while the space program yielded an incredible number of technological innovations that have made our existence easier and more convenient, it hasn't made the world a better place, or us better human beings. As General Douglas MacArthur observed many, many years ago at the dawn of the atomic age, mankind's problems are theological, not technical. They're spiritual, not scientific. Only belief in God and following His truth will deliver us from the evil that plagues us in humankind. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
We're back, folks. The number here is 888-589-8840. Now, I'm going to say something to you all, and please be patient because we're going to come to the calls in a second. But I want to say something to you all that you may find a bit shocking. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and believe it or not, it really just hit me this weekend, what I'm about to say. I have talked in the past about totalitarianism and about the left really wanting this to be a totalitarian country, but I've now come to this conclusion that, we already are culturally a totalitarian nation. I mean, just think about this for a second. Culturally, not legally, but culturally, we are already a totalitarian nation. Because what does totalitarianism do? It wants to control everything and everybody. And it does that by controlling people. You have to control what they think or what they are allowed to think. They have no interior life that is allowable, because sooner or later, if you allow an interior life, then it comes out of the mouth, and that's when people get punished. So it controls what they think. It indoctrinates them. It controls what they say. There is no such thing as free speech in a totalitarian system. And it controls, obviously, what they do. People don't have the freedom to be themselves, because the government, in a totalitarian system of government, the government controls that. We are in a time, an era of cultural totalitarianism brought on by the left in our country. And what is the left doing? They're using cultural mechanisms and institutions to control what people think, what people say, and what people do. Now, in a totalitarian system, what happens when you don't say the things that you are expected to or required to or legally mandated to say? You are punished, right? You are punished in one way or another. You are punished. You are punished with the loss of a job, the loss of an apartment or a home, the loss of maybe access to some of the privileges that you might otherwise be given by the party apparatus or whatever controls the society. You may suffer the loss of reputation. You become a persona non grata in your own neighborhood. You get, as they say in Cuba, shunned. You know, Castro would have his minions shun people who were not towing the Communist Party line sufficiently. All of these things will happen to you in a totalitarian state. Well, in a totalitarian culture, they do it with the mechanisms and institutions that influence culture and people, but it really is close to the same result. The only thing they don't have yet, they don't have the ability to just en masse put people in prison. They don't have the ability yet, at least not legally, to torture people, to punish. They don't have the ability to lock people away in labor camps or put people in indoctrination camps yet. But then again, maybe they don't need that because after all, isn't that what colleges and universities are today? Aren't they indoctrination camps? Aren't many public schools? The California public school system is just one big indoctrination camp. You send your child away to it for 6 to 8 hours a day, and they come back completely brainwashed into believing what the left tells them they're supposed to believe. It's totalitarian culture. And now, let me just give you a few instances. And the number here is 888-589-8840. I just played you a clip from Illhan Omar, and you could hear her admiration for the terrorists. When you say Al-Qaeda, you say it with intensity. When you say Hezbollah, you say it with intensity. You don't say America with intensity. You don't say England with intensity. You don't say Army with intensity. You are getting a window into the woman's terroristic soul. She admires the terrorists. Now, what does terrorism do? Terrorism is a non-governmental way of controlling how people think, what people say, and what people do. Now, the totalitarian end for Islam ultimately is that everybody must be Islamic. Okay, everybody must submit to Islam, submit to the God of Islam. But it's the same thing, isn't it? Because there's no freedom of speech in Islam. There's no freedom of conscience in Islam. Islam views every Muslim as a slave to Allah. And slaves do simply what their master tells them, and that's it and that's all. It's a very different theological perspective than Christians. We see ourselves as children of God. We serve him, we love him. We serve him because we love him. We don't serve him because we're his slaves. Jesus said, I call you no more servants or slaves, but friends. He is our Father. We acknowledge him as our master. We do that voluntarily, not because he says, you be my slave or else. But with Islam, that's exactly the way it works. It's another totalitarian system, which is, again, folks, why Sharia law is inconsistent with the constitutional republic that we have here. It's inconsistent with it. I know, here again, politically, you're not allowed to say that because here, that's the totalitarian system. Bishop E.W. Jackson is an Islamophobe. He dared say that Sharia law is inconsistent with the Constitution. Who does he think he is? Why would he say such a thing? Because it's true. But you see, one of the things that happens, of course, we know that the most pervasive totalitarian system, other than Islam today, is communism. And we know in communism, you're not allowed to say anything that the party does not sanction. And we know that the truth doesn't matter because they let you know there is the only thing that matters is what advances the interests of the party. Truth as an absolute reality does not exist. And morality as absolute truth does not exist. Whatever furthers the interests of the party, that's what matters. And folks, I think here again, America has already become a totalitarian culture. Now, I'm not saying in every corner of the nation, but the impact is very widespread. Think about this: hate crimes. I oppose hate crimes. I still oppose hate crimes. In fact, I've said I hate hate crimes. And the reason why I hate the very concept is, as a free nation, we don't punish people for what they think. We punish people for what they do. And this concept of hate crimes came out of the homosexual community because they want the ability to bully everybody else, but they want to turn themselves into victims of bullies and make it the rest of us feel like, well, you know, if you disagree with homosexuality, if you disagree with same-sex marriage, you are a bully. And they don't want to accept this. Are you all ready for this? Are you sure you're ready for this? And we're going to come back. We're going to come to the phones in a minute. The number is 888-589-8840. Are you all ready for this? I want to be sure that you are ready for this. Folks, part of the reason for bullying legislation, and I'm not saying that no homosexual's ever been bullied or harassed or mistreated or anything like that. I know that because human beings mistreat other human beings for a whole variety of reasons. There's no reason why homosexuality wouldn't be an exception, okay? So I know that. But I'll tell you what hate crimes is really meant to do. It's really meant to shield homosexuals from the possibility of a beatdown for approaching the wrong person. Yeah, I know I said it, and I'll say it again. Because let's face it, in a lot of circles, in a lot of places, and I grew up in a place like this where people thought this way, if a homosexual made the mistake of approaching the wrong person, touching that person the wrong way, making the wrong approach, that homosexual was not just going to get spoken to harshly. That homosexual was going to get his backside beat down. I'm not saying that was right, okay? I'm not saying it was right. But let's face it, when you approach a man in an inappropriate way, or you touch a man in an inappropriate way, implying that you want to have some kind of sexual relationship with him, and he resents that, the likelihood of his getting angry enough to punch you in your face is quite high. And folks, a number of these major stories hit the news where homosexuals would be in places, be in bars, be in drunk somewhere, and they approach somebody in the bathroom and they get punched out. That's bullying now. See, that's homophobia. I think I may not have told you all this story. I went to a major retail store to buy a gift for my wife. I don't know whether it was for anniversary or what. But I saw some jewelry and I liked it. I said, you know what, I think she would really enjoy that. And so they went and got the person who was supposed to be serving me. And so the person walked up and you could tell, the person as they walked up, he was, let's put it this way, honey was dripping from him, okay? He was as sweet as he could be. Just the whole way he carried himself. He was not manly, let's put it that way. And so fine, but I've said before, I don't mistreat people or say bad things to people because, in my view that they're wrong or, that I don't agree with the way they're living or anything like that. I treat every human being with respect. So he went behind the counter and he got the jewelry for me, okay? And when he handed it to me, folks, I'll never forget the moment. When he handed it to me, his hand slipped off the jewelry and onto my wrist and came down off my wrist, with a kind of feminine touch. Now, I have to tell you, that made me extremely angry. And there was a part of me that wanted to punch his lights out. I'm serious about it. I'm just being honest. There's a part of me that wanted to punch his lights out because I'm not interested in a man. I don't want to be touched inappropriately by anybody for that matter. But I certainly, as a man, don't want to be touched in some sexual way by some perverted man. And I just kind of looked at him and said, let me have somebody else wait on me. Because I didn't want to because I know anything I say or do at that point makes me homophobic. He's the victim, I'm the bad guy. So, and if I had punched him out, guess what? It would have been a hate crime. Folks, that's totalitarianism because basically I wouldn't have been punished for assaulting the guy. I would have been punished for assaulting the guy because he's a homosexual. And we shouldn't be punished for the way we think. We should be punished for what we do. I didn't punch him. Okay? I didn't hit him. I didn't touch him. In fact, arguably, he assaulted me. My point is, this is totalitarianism, where you have a society that is telling you, here's the way you've got to think, and if you don't think that way, you are not acceptable, and we are going to punish you for it. The colleges and universities and even public schools are doing it. You know, campuses are banning Christian groups because they won't let homosexuals be in their leadership. I'm serious, folks. I mean, banning the groups that you can't be on the campus. Why? You discriminate. You're bigoted. Well, we're Christians. This person's not a Christian. Why would we want that person in the leadership role of a Christian group? Well, that's bigotry. That's hatred. The destruction of the traditional family. Somebody got angry because Google did a seminar on the family and they didn't bother to include the homosexual family, and they had a near riot in Google. How dare that bigotry come here and bring us that, families are not just men and women and children, This is, and basically they apologized, and that'll never happen again. You all know Kay Cole James, great pro-life hero in our country, now head of the Heritage Foundation. She was kicked, they disbanded the whole board because some of the leftists found out she was on this board to make recommendations about the use of artificial intelligence, and they found out that she is traditional family, pro-life, and they wanted her off the board, so Google, taking the cowardly way out, just disbanded the board altogether. Folks, this is totalitarian culture. Because look, what does the Communist Party do when it takes over? The absolute measure for your success and access to the resources that you need is party loyalty. If you are not loyal to the party, you are going to be lacking, if not punished. Remember Kelvin Cochran down in Atlanta, the head of the fire department, because they found out he was going to churches reaffirming that marriage is a union between one man and one woman in the sight of God, and they found out about it. He had done nothing wrong on his job, but the mayor suspended him and then fired him. Of course, it took several years, but finally he won in court, and the city had to pay him because it was a wrongful termination. But see, they don't care. They want to punish people who won't yield to their belief system. And folks like that, and I believe that that's where Illhan Omar is coming from, that's where Rashida Tlaib is coming from, that's where Ariana Presley's coming from, that's where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a.k.a. the boss, as she calls herself, is coming from. And that's why I say yes. If that's the kind of world they want, if that's the kind of system they want, go somewhere else. Because we here in America believe in liberty. 888-589-8840 is the number. Okay, let's go to the lines. Joe in Ohio, welcome.
You got me finally. I've been listening to you while I'm on hold, and I'm loving it. And you took all my talking points, but I'm going to try to get a couple of back in there.
Go ahead, Joe. Listen, they bear repeating.
Yep, you were talking about to tell it. That is great because I believe that same thing, and I love your world. I called it something different, though. I call it the liberal, progressive, gender fluid, reverse Nazism. Because basically that's what I think is going on. They're using the Nazi playbook, just not from the top down, from the bottom up. And they're brainwashing the kids. I totally agree. And that kind of answers, I think I gave you one question, and I said, what makes these people vote for these guys? If they're obviously, into socialism and some of the stuff's so radical, what gets people to do it? And I'm thinking you kind of answered that question it's the brainwashing of a couple of generations. Because I can remember my daughter coming home from school telling me, she says, you're a racist. And I said, what are you talking about? And here she's telling me this stuff that she's learning in school. And I thought, well, what happened to math? What happened to history? They call it current events now. They don't teach history anymore.
Right.
And all this stuff she's learning, I'm thinking, how can I combat this? There's not a racist bone in my body. I mean, I met, there wasn't a lot of black guys. I was born in 60. Didn't have a lot of black guys going into school. But when I went into the Army, I met black guys.
Well, Joe, and with that, we've got to go. But thanks for calling and thanks for the comments. God bless you.
Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
Biden and Bernie are trading barbs over Medicare for All, but what do you need to know? Both Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All and Joe Biden's public option plan are socialized medicine. They will both lead to a government-run, single-payer system of care and coverage that puts American lives and quality of life at risk. Biden said he doesn't support Medicare for All, that unlike Bernie, he wouldn't end employer-sponsored coverage. But researchers disagree, saying the public option, a government-run health plan available to all Americans, would lead to 119 million people losing employer coverage. So don't be fooled. Bernie and Biden both plan to end freedom, ration care, and impose single payer.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly E-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
The loss of a child through abortion, miscarriage, or stillbirth affects the emotional health of families. Feelings of anger, sadness, and regret can be overwhelming. There is hope and healing in the aftermath of a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline at 866-482-LIFE to talk with someone who has been where you are and healed to help others. Your call is confidential. 866-482-LIFE.
American Family Coffee.
Yum. Delicious. I drink a lot of it.
I buy the big bag too. I don't buy the little one. I like the 5-pound bag. We can't really find anything in our local grocery stores that compare to American Family Coffee.
American Family Coffee. Get yours today at afastore.net.
The Ministry of Preborn meets abortion-minded women right where they are. When a young mom sees her baby on ultrasound, she's 80% more likely to keep her baby.
And I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry, and it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
This mom chose life for her baby.
She's been such a joy. Her name even means rebirth and sort of being raised up from the ashes. I now see my daughter, and I cannot imagine my life without my happy, lovely, joyful, smart baby, and I'm so grateful.
Preborn runs and leads Christian pregnancy centers all over the country. To find out more, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Your love can save a life.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Okay, look, the number here is 888-589-8840. The lines are full. If you want to talk to me before the show ends, get right in there. We're going to try to come right to you. I'll say one other thing, and then we're coming right to you callers. And that is, communism, like this cultural totalitarianism, or as Joe described it, a kind of Nazism, it's morally relative, meaning that there is no right or wrong other than what advances the interests of the party. And so you can lie, you can slander, you can kill, you can imprison, you can torture, you can falsify against people. You can do anything you want to do as long as it advances the cause. And right now, for example, they're falsifying charges against our president. They've been doing it since he's been in office. And one of the false charges is racism. President Donald J. Trump is not a racist. Period. Exclamation point. I happen to be an American of African descent. I know racism when I see it. He ain't no racist, folks. Forgive the broken English, but for purposes of emphasis, he is not a racist. But they're going to keep throwing that at him like they throw homophobia and Islamophobia and transphobia and, anything they can come up with, sexist, to marginalize you and to slander you and to destroy your reputation, they will try to do. And that's exactly what communists, what totalitarianists, what they do. Remember what Hitler did? Hitler slandered the whole Jewish people. He accused them of burning down the Reichstag. So, folks, that's the nature of what we're dealing with. Let's go right to the phones. We've got George of Missouri. George, welcome.
Hey, thank you for your ministry, EW, and your time in the Corps.
Thank you, George. Semper Fi.
You too. My daddy was a World War II Marine, and anyway, he was Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Amen.
But anyway, I think the president was all in his rights to do what he did with the squad. And if it was me as an American that came in on the boat, when they first started this country, I would have said, oh, okay, you got your rights to say that about me, that America, love it or leave it. And if you don't love this country, there's plenty of other countries to go to. And what is I was going to ask you, what is the white privilege? Is that like double coupons for the grocery store or something? I'm like, I haven't got the memo yet. And
George,
it's
just ridiculous.
The way I'd like to be treated. I don't care what color they are, what nationality, whatever, and try to treat them the way. And if they act badly to me, then I back away from them, pray for them, and
there you go, George.
There you go.
And listen, if we can put it bluntly, I've met black jerks and white jerks and Asian jerks and Hispanic jerks. I've met great people from every ethnic background who are just some of the most wonderful people you ever want to meet. We know it has nothing whatsoever to do with skin color. And these people are trying to smear all white people because they know they can't convince Americans that they can't make it here, but they're trying to convince Americans that all white Americans are racist and therefore, quote unquote, people of color can't make it here because the white people won't let them. I mean, and it's utterly preposterous. Ask some of these poor guys who grew up tough, who've made a life for themselves, how much privilege they got because they were white. Please. Okay, George, thank you so much for the call. Let's go to Sean of Louisiana.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, Sean, how are you?
All right, I'm calling about the revisions of the writing of laws and this and that. Deuteronomy 23:17 says sodomy, homosexuality is dogs of deception. Old and New Testament. If man was meant to be with another man, he would have made Adam and Steve, not Adam and Eve.
Come on now.
All things are abomination that offends God, and we should repent, abstain, and ask forgiveness. Sodom, Judah, Greece, and Rome was destroyed by this sickness. Buttigieg and sound similar to John Wayne Gacy, Gary Gilmore, and Ted Bundy. I didn't have a choice. Yeah, sure, right. What you make of your life is your choice, and reflecting on it differs but not the same. Just blame God. And it sounds like somebody's listening to Satan, sure enough, but Lucifer lurks in here and there and behind every corner. So God didn't make it this way. God gave you the choice, but you're here to choose. Freedom exists not to do what you want, but to do what you ought to do.
All right, Sean, great comments. Thank you very much. I would make clear, of course, I think everybody knows this, to Buttigieg, to our knowledge, has not committed any serial murders as the people that you mentioned did, so I don't want to in any way accuse him of that. But I see the broader point that you're making, and see the left will never concede the broader point. They will jump on something like that. But the broader point is that, well, why is anything anybody does a sin if it's under compulsion? If they say, well, I couldn't help it. Well, I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't do anything about it. It's the way I was made. It's the way I was born. It's whatever. I mean, you're right. That can become an excuse for every abominable behavior imaginable. But I will say again, we have no indication whatsoever that Pete Buttigieg is doing anything like that. But he is certainly using God as an excuse for his pride in his homosexuality, and that is in clear contradiction to what the Word of God says. And that is really the broader point that I want everybody to walk away with. Okay, let's go to BJ in Louisiana. BJ, welcome to Focal Point.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Listener, first-time caller. And I totally agree with your point about this being a totalitarian government, not legally, but by a social construct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That said, we can all be the change. You can be the change by, in the words of our president, going back to where you came from if you don't like it. Am I right or am I wrong? If you don't like it, you can go back to where you came from. You know, I've lived my life by minding my business and letting people live theirs. If you don't like the way this country is going, go back to Africa. It's simple. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you very much, BJ. I mean, look, folks, you know, I've said this so many times before. I've done a lot of research on conditions in Africa, and the reality is that there's not a single black person in this country who's got the sense God gave them who would prefer to live anywhere in Africa than here, unless they're escaping after having committed some crime or something like that. There have been people who've tried that one, but short of that, my ancestors came here over 200 years ago. I've traced my lineage. My ancestry in America goes back at least 200 years, maybe further. I've never been to Africa. I don't know anything about Africa, and I do know this, that the conditions in which Africans live don't even come close to the prosperity and the opportunity and the freedom that people enjoy in this nation. And so if you have nothing good to say about America, you don't like America, you don't like our flag, you don't like our national anthem, you don't like our system of government, you don't like our economy, you don't like our people, you think all the white people in America, they're all white supremacists, and they're all, well, just pack up and go. That's all. I mean, just pack up and go. And folks, please hear this in the right spirit. I have been so blessed in this country that I can't even begin to tell it all. And I'll tell you one of the blessings I've received. One of the blessings I've received is getting to know people of different backgrounds and ethnicities and races and origins. That has profoundly enriched my life. You know, you can go to Japan, but you know who you're going to meet in Japan? Japanese. Because you'll never be Japanese. I could move to Japan tomorrow, but they'll never call me a Japanese. And you can go to Africa today, whoever you are, but I got news for you. You know what the Africans think of you? You're an American. This is the only place people can come to, no matter where they've come from, and be here and actually become Americans, regardless of skin color, regardless of nationality, regardless of where you came from. You can actually become an American. And I'll tell you something, I've had such a wonderful life getting to meet and know so many people from so many different backgrounds that, here again, that's one of the blessings. And that's why I told them at the conference this past weekend, I said, I never thought the day would come when I would find myself having to defend white people. But, you know, but here I am. Because, look, folks, and thank you all for your patience. Just give me a minute to say this, and I'm going to come right back to the phones. Look, folks, there is none righteous, no, not one. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Nobody has a monopoly on righteousness, and nobody has a monopoly on sin. And it's one of the most preposterous, unbiblical, demonic ideas that anybody ever came up with. I've said this so many times, but I'll say it one more time. Folks, all you have to do is just go look at history, go past the existence of the United States of America. And folks, this is not an exaggeration by any stretch. This is not an exaggeration. The whole world was in slavery because the world was run by tyrants and kings and feudal lords. And so everybody under their leadership was their slave, in effect. They determined what property you got. They determined how well you lived. They determined what you were punished for. It was one man rule every place on the face of the earth. Now, that rule changes. One tyrant killed another tyrant to become the next tyrant and so forth. But the idea that somehow slavery is something unique to America, America didn't create it, we inherited it. But only one nation founded itself on the principle that every human being is created by God and given rights by our Creator, and that those rights, among those rights, are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's never been another nation like it. And that's what every person, whether you're from Europe or you're from Africa or you're from Asia or you're from, you pick a place on the globe, you inherit that legacy. I was never a slave, and there's nobody listening to me who happens to be white who was a slave master. That was 150 years ago. Jim Crow is over, slavery is over, we're free Americans now, we get to chart the course of our own lives. So here again, to echo what my listeners have said, if you find someplace better, don't let the doorknob hit you on the way out. Okay, let's see. Gary from Texas, are you still there? Thanks for your patience, Gary. Okay, we lost Gary. All right. Well, folks, we still got time. 888-589-8840. We still got time to get a call or two in. But look, I'm sorry, who from Kentucky? Go right ahead. Go right ahead, from Kentucky.
Yes, I just wanted to comment on your show today, how much I appreciate it and all the things you said. And for the last caller, I've been in here laughing, so I had to get myself under control here. It's kind of everything's funny. But when I hear the word racist anymore, I turn the TV. I am so tired of that. And I think that if they don't know any more than that, they need to get a new vocabulary. And another thing, my niece married a black man. She's white. He said that there's no such thing as racism. And he said that he didn't want to hear it.
Amen.
My grandson I'm white. My grandson married a lady that's black. They have 2 children, and I really love them. They love me. But, the people that's making all of this up, I don't have any words for it. I'm glad for all of the black pastors, all of the men and women who have the nerve and the sense to rebuke all of these things on TV. I'm just really thankful, and I'm thankful for your show today, and I agree with you. I stand by the president.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you so much for calling. I appreciate that. Folks, that's America. And love has no color. I'm talking about real love. I'm not talking about this stuff that this LGBT community, they think is love, is nothing but perverted lust. I'm talking about real love. It has no color. And we can love one another and pray for one another and bless one another and encourage one another. And that's what, to me, the vision for America should be all about. But those people who don't want that, and by the way, let me say to all of you and to that caller, that they're using race to manipulate and control people. That's what that's all about. And by the way, I'm going to be back tomorrow, but think about this. If you know somebody who's been persecuted because they take a stand for God, a stand for the Bible, a stand for the president, let me know. And in the meantime, remember this, in behalf of Brian Fisher at Focal Point, we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side.
The views and